I am divorcing my husband after he invited his ex for dinner and humiliated me. Now everyone's saying I am wrong for wanting out. We have a 4-year-old boy together, and Tom and I have been married for 5 years. He was an undergraduate and I was completing my master's degree when we first met in graduate school. I quit my job after getting married, but I had to go back to work when our baby was 6 months old since Tom's salary wasn't enough to support the three of us. Many arguments resulted from that choice since Tom believed it was disrespectful to him in some way and demonstrated my lack of confidence in his skills. I tried to persuade him for weeks that this was not related to his ability and that, in my opinion, 2 salaries would be preferable to 1. After he learned he could take some time off work to spend with our son, he finally warmed up to me after being angry with me for a long time. The drawback was that I ended up doing all of the housework in addition to my job. Tom says his job is more physically demanding than mine because he works as a personal trainer at a nearby gym. He believes that since I work from a desk, I should take care of the majority of the housework despite working longer hours. He said home chores shouldn't be too taxing for me because I don't perform much physical activity at work. We had agreed when I first started working that he would assist with at least some duties, but every time I returned home, the job was only partially completed. He often claimed to be too tired as an excuse. We would argue about it all the time until I finally gave up on trying to get him to do his share. To prevent the frequent conflicts, I started taking care of everything myself. I started smoking because I was so stressed out. Tom also made fun of me for this, claiming that I was merely attempting to flaunt my level of stress. In addition to enduring Tom's constant criticism of my poor cooking, which was mostly his fault because he never assisted with meal preparation and I had to juggle everything between work and other responsibilities, I had been living like this for the past few years. Knowing that leaving would have an effect on our son's life, I stayed solely for his sake. I finally gave up and hired a maid last year, covering her money out of pocket. Tom continued to make fun of me because he believed it was a reflection of my poor housekeeping abilities. He was often contrasting me with his mother, his aunts, and other women he knew who had no trouble juggling work and home. He would simply laugh it off and tell me to calm down because it was only a joke. Even though I would counter that these women most likely had supporting husbands, I would be much more enraged by that. We would occasionally have fun together, but the times he would irritate me were what I remembered, and I had been thinking about getting a divorce for a while when Tom brought his ex-girlfriend Lucy, 28F, home for supper last week. I finally lost it. His high school girlfriend Lucy and he dated for nearly 6 years before splitting up because they were attending different universities. The first time he saw her was at the grocery store. She had just moved into our area, and he had asked her over for supper without even asking me. Even after our marriage, Tom's friends would frequently bring her up and make fun of him for it, so I knew these two were quite the item in high school. However, that didn't prepare me for his overly pleasant and flirtatious behavior during dinner. He was clearly attempting to irritate me, and it was succeeding. That was the second strike. Then the third strike. He began making jokes about what a messy housewife I would be, and how fortunate I was to have my career as a justification. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to explain to any of my guests why I am such a bad cook. Because Lucy is a stay-at-home mother of 2 girls, he continued making jokes about how much better she was at everything than I was. He joked that I would never be caught doing anything like that after telling me that Lucy was actually at the grocery store purchasing ingredients for a French dish she intended to prepare for her husband. It made them both laugh a lot. He also mentioned my smoking, claiming that I was only trying to flaunt my stress levels, much like Lucy, who was flawless at everything. I was fighting back tears by that point, but I chose to smile through it all because I didn't want Lucy to get the pleasure of seeing me cry. I decided to leave after serving them ice cream for dessert because it was an embarrassing experience. I waited until Tom went to bed that evening. This wasn't odd because I typically clean the dishes at night and don't go to bed until he's sleeping. I packed some clothes and other essentials for our son and myself, booked a cab, and went to my parents' place as soon as he started snoring. By the time I arrived, it was almost midnight. I started crying as soon as my mother opened the door and I attempted to explain. My youngster, who was irritable and perplexed, started crying as a result. Since I wasn't sure whether Tom could take good care of him while I was away, and I didn't want to leave him to find out, I had to bring him along. Without asking, my parents took us in, And when they put my son to bed, I was at last able to collect myself and tell them everything. Tom called me in a hurry the following morning to find out where I was. The worry in his voice vanished, and he burst out laughing when I told him the truth and announced that I was going to file for divorce. He advised me to just come home and stop the turmoil. I became so enraged by that I began ranting at him, accusing him of being a misogynistic, lazy, selfish, and inept man. He finally appeared to get that I was serious when I told him that I would rather be single for the rest of my life than return to him. He began arguing with me on the phone, accusing me of exaggerating and making a huge fuss out of nothing rather than offering an apology. He asserted that there was no need to take things personally, and that his jokes were merely an attempt to lighten the atmosphere around Lucy. The problem is that his jokes weren't hilarious, they were nasty and cruel, especially considering that I was already making every effort every day. He simply continued to test my limits. He began acting like the victim when he realized that this was more than just a joke, saying that I had been plotting my departure for some time and that this was the final straw. Currently, all of our friends are texting me to tell me that I should prioritize our family over myself and not allow a few dumb jokes to ruin our marriage. Everyone keeps saying that I shouldn't ruin a home over some jokes, even though I've attempted to explain that there are a lot of things they don't know. Some people seem to feel more at ease when I posted an explanation of all I had previously discussed. Tom also noticed it and remarked that I should have notified him if these were my issues and he would have taken care of it. I've been telling him these things for years, but nothing has changed, so it's absurd. I just finished and it felt like I was speaking to a wall. But following that post, he began to insist that he only needed one final shot to make it work and that he would change and get better. He convinced some of our acquaintances to try to convince me to stay by telling me that he would undoubtedly improve and make a fantastic spouse. However, it irritates me that he continually brings up our pals. He seems to be using a deceptive and immature strategy peer pressure to try to talk me out of pursuing a divorce. Over the past few years, I've given him numerous opportunities to get better, but he's never done so I don't think he's capable of changing anymore. Even if I stayed right now, I am confident that he would attempt to make a sincere effort for a few months before reverting to his previous conduct. I am tired of being a single mother even though I have a spouse, and I am not getting any younger. He's hardly the ideal role model for our son. Aside from anything else, I most certainly do not want my son to grow up in a home where Tom's kind of behavior is accepted. For the sake of my son and I stayed with him for a very long time, and now I am leaving him for the same reason. I filed for divorce 2 days ago, and he was served today. He is upset, primarily because he never wanted a divorce in the first place, and because I have asked to keep the house where we lived and filed for full custody of our son, or sell it, and divide the proceeds 60/40ths with me receiving the larger portion. Since both of our parents gave us the house as a wedding present, I believe it is only just that I keep it, or that we divide the proceeds from its sale because of all the labor and effort I've put in over the past few years working full-time, raising my son, and handling all home chores without his assistance. I feel that I should be given the greater part. I believe the petition is quite reasonable because I am not even asking for alimony. Even though I want a divorce, Tom claims I am being unfair and that I shouldn't have asked for full custody because our son is equally his and mine, which is reasonable. But I don't believe he's capable of being a father. He may still visit and see his son whenever he wants to. I haven't attempted to take away his visiting privileges. He simply does not have him on a full-time basis. After I was served, he called and said I was being crazy and that this was a terrible overreaction. He claimed that since I was requesting full custody and the house, he already didn't agree with the divorce and had good reason to think I was being irrational. It was really embarrassing when he broke down in tears on the other end when I stated that I had thought a lot about it and that it hadn't been easy for me either. It's very clear from everything I've written that Tom isn't a particularly emotional person, so his breakdown is a huge issue. He was crying and told me very dramatically that he had taken everything for granted because he never thought he could bear to lose me one day. He pleaded with me to give him one final opportunity to demonstrate his ability to be a wonderful father and husband. I had to let him know that my decision was definite and that he had come to the realization a bit too late. even though it was really difficult for me to do so. I couldn't simply return to that life. It was strange and uncomfortable for me to have to stay on the phone and try to comfort him for the following several minutes as he began to cry even more. He eventually stopped sobbing and declared that if our son suffered as a result, he would never be able to forgive either himself or me. We might renegotiate the terms of his custody in a few years when he's a little older, so I reassured him that this was only a temporary arrangement. I informed him that although this would be difficult for us both, we needed to strive to be strong for our son's sake and make the most of our circumstances. However, he quickly ended the call, and for the next few hours, I didn't hear from anyone. But all of a sudden, our pals have been contacting me once more, telling me that what I am doing is fundamentally wrong and that I should think twice before acting. They're arguing that rather than being so heartless and self-centered, I should give it some thought since Tom is pleading for one more chance. It was only a handful at first, but now it's almost everyone we know, and I am beginning to seriously think about changing my mind because I might be the bad guy here. I have no idea anymore. Since my husband doesn't assist me, am I the jerk for requesting a divorce and full custody of our son? Hello, following a very hectic week, I am back with an update. My lawyer and I have been getting ready for the talks for the divorce settlement and custody dispute. Tom and I will first meet with the mediator appointed by the court. The actual divorce process doesn't worry me too much, but I am quite anxious about the custody dispute. Everyone keeps saying that my desire for full custody is absurd, but they don't see the big picture. Our son spends more time with me and always has, so I know he favors me. We all know that's not how kids operate, but Tom has always attempted to build a relationship with our son just on his terms. Observing Tom's abrupt change into a worried father has been one of the most annoying aspects of the previous week. He has been making false claims on social media about how much he misses his son and how unfair it is that he is unable to see him. He hasn't attempted, but he is welcome to come at any time. These posts have been reposted by a number of mutual acquaintances who have added their own remarks about what a loving parent he is. The truth is very different. Even our son's daily schedule, preferred meals, and allergies are unknown to Tom. He called us only recently to inquire if our youngster still enjoys dinosaur-shaped nuggets due to his current space-themed food obsession. Our son hasn't had those in more than a year. These minor details cast doubt on his capacity to serve as a main caregiver. Given that I have been actively involved in our son's life while Tom has only occasionally done so, my lawyer believes we have a solid case. Everything from the doctor's visits I've taken our son to, the parent-teacher conferences Tom has missed, and the daily schedule I've kept up while working a full-time job are all being documented. The financial things are a complete disaster. Some preliminary documents were sent over by Tom's lawyer, who is disputing my request for the house. They contend that it ought to be divided equally because it was a wedding present from both families. Conveniently, they fail to mention that I have been responsible for all of the upkeep, fixes, and upgrades throughout the years. The incessant barrage of messages from people who hardly understand our predicament is what's truly getting to me. Even some of Tom's gym patrons have contacted me to express their sadness and to tell me what a wonderful man he has always been. They seem to be living in a different universe where having a charming personality at work inevitably translates into being a good spouse and father. My mother-in-law's response has been the most unexpected development. She genuinely phoned me to let me know that she understood my decision. In contrast to the majority of our friends who have sided with Tom, she disclosed that during the early years of their marriage, she and Tom's father experienced similar problems, but she decided to stay and try to resolve them. I could tell how that worked out for her just by the resignation in her voice as she stated those words. All of this has been made possible by the tremendous support of my own parents. When I need to meet with lawyers or take care of paperwork, my mom has been watching our son while my dad helps me manage my financial documents. I've come to appreciate how alone and unsupported I felt in my marriage thanks to their assistance. To be honest, there have been occasions when the tension has been too much to handle. For the first time since I moved out, I found myself reaching for a cigarette last night, but I restrained myself. I came to the realization that my smoking was not a necessity, but rather a result of my marital dissatisfaction. You get clarity in these moments, which is odd. Late at night, Tom has begun texting me lengthy texts that range from tearful pleas to irate accusations. He mentioned in his most recent message that he has been learning how to properly do laundry and cooking by viewing tutorials. If it weren't so depressing, it would almost be humorous. At the age of 28, he is only now choosing to develop these fundamental life skills. Screenshots of Tom's private social media posts in which he offers his perspective have been sent by several mutual acquaintances. He presents himself as a loving spouse who was taken by surprise by a wife who had never expressed her displeasure. People are accusing me of being cold-hearted and speculating that I may be experiencing a midlife crisis in the comments section. That one made me laugh. It seems like I am already experiencing a midlife crisis at the age of 35. My lawyer told me not to react to any of these provocations but to record everything. She claims that when he engages in this type of deceptive behavior in public, it actually helps our cause. It's difficult to avoid feeling under attack from all sides, though. Observing how much more at ease our son has been since we relocated to my parents' place is the one thing that keeps me grounded. He appears to be happier overall and is eating and sleeping better. Naturally, he still inquires about his father, but he isn't as worried about it as he was when we all shared a home and things were tense. Next week is the date of my first mediation session. Even though my lawyer has prepared for this, I am still anxious. I am aware that it will be a challenging process because Tom's attorney has already stated that they intend to vigorously oppose the full custody request. Every day that goes by makes me feel more certain about my choice, even with all the pressure and second-guessing from others. I've been reminded of what a supportive home is like by living with my parents. For the first time in years, I am getting enough sleep, and I am beginning to recall my former self before I got so caught up in trying to make an impossible situation work. As we begin the legal proceedings, the upcoming weeks will be critical. After the mediation session, I'll provide another update, but for now, I just wanted to express my gratitude to everyone who helped me with my first post. When I was most doubting myself, your remarks kept me going. Update 2. Tom paid us a visit at my parents' house today. Since my last update, which was a week and a half ago, I must admit that I was terrified of this encounter. This was most likely our final informal meeting before the actual legal process starts, as we have our mediation session in a few days. Given all of his recent passionate text messages, I anticipated this visit to be contentious, but today's events fundamentally altered my viewpoint on a number of issues. Tom was standing there when I answered the door, looking more put together than I had seen him in a long time. In addition to bringing a small gift bag for our son, he was dressed appropriately in a button-down shirt, rather than his typical gym clothing. His manner truly caught my attention. None of the defensiveness or animosity I had been bracing myself for was present. Even when we were married, he seldom ever engaged in small talk with my parents. He talked to my dad about some local sports and inquired about my mom's garden. Yes, it was embarrassing, yet oddly polite. This unexpectedly normal conversation lasted for approximately 15 minutes before he asked to see our son. It took me a bit to answer because the way he asked not demanded, but asked was already so different from how he usually behaves. When we entered the living room, our son was playing. His whole face brightened when he spotted Tom. "Daddy!" he yelled, dropping his toys and sprinting directly into Tom's embrace. I watched their interaction from the doorway. When I brought up our son's new space passion in the custody documents, Tom brought a new puzzle, one with spaceships, demonstrating that he had genuinely listened. Tom let our kid take the lead in assembling it, something he had never done before, and they sat on the floor together. Typically, he attempted to regulate the activities and became irate when our son did not precisely follow his directions. Hearing Tom inquire about our son's day, his daycare pals, and his favorite aspects of living at Grandma and Grandpa's place truly got to me. He truly listened to our son's meandering responses about the treehouse in the backyard and the neighbor's cat. I had never witnessed him interact with our son in this way in all the years we had been married. At one occasion, our son began to tell Tom about how I prepare rocket-shaped sandwiches for him. Previously, Tom would have made a snarky remark about my culinary abilities, but now he wanted our kid to show him how. Our son took his father's instruction on how to properly assemble a rocket sandwich extremely seriously, and they spent the next 20 minutes in the kitchen. Our son's question about when he might see his father again was the true turning point. I was struck by the hopeful expression on both of their faces. Tom didn't try to control the situation or make demands right away. He simply stared at me while he awaited my answer. When it was time for Tom to leave after they had finished playing, our son gave him a big embrace and invited him to return the next day. Tom gave me a curious look, and before I had given it much thought, I found myself nodding. Before Tom left, we had a little conversation at the door. He admitted that he had been a terrible father thus far without displaying his customary defensiveness. He acknowledged that he realized how much he had missed by not being more involved after witnessing our son's growth and transformation in only these few weeks. Even though he couldn't be a better husband, he assured me he was willing to learn everything he could to become a better father. He said he had been attending parenting classes 3 times a week and had hired a nanny to teach him how to properly care for children. Not to gloat, but to show me that he was serious about this, he displayed the diplomas on his phone. He didn't make any lofty claims about changing or try to get me to return. Instead, he proposed that we arrange a timetable that would allow him to demonstrate his ability to be a responsible parent without interfering with our son's daily routine. I called my lawyer after he departed. I informed her that I would be willing to talk about a joint custody agreement and that I no longer wanted to pursue full custody. She brought up all of the records we had collected demonstrating Tom's prior lack of involvement, but I told her that even if he hadn't been a good husband, I needed to give him an opportunity to improve as a father. Our son's expression of unadulterated happiness today made me realize that even though it's the proper thing to terminate my marriage, I don't have the authority to break off my son's relationship with his father, especially now that Tom is finally demonstrating that he wants to be the father our son deserves. Update 3. Surprisingly, the divorce talks are proceeding considerably more amicably than I had anticipated. Tom and his attorney have been extremely helpful, which I believe is his way of expressing regret for his previous actions. Our son's custody arrangements are still being worked out verbally and informally, but we're thinking that he should spend half of the month at his dad's house and the other half at mine. Actually, we're doing just that at the moment. In a few days, my son will move in with his father. This arrangement first made me nervous, but Tom has really come through for me. To his great relief, he has begged his mother for assistance. She has been more supportive than some of my closest friends. Even when our marriage ended, she still gives me a call every day to see how I am doing and sends me photos of the bedroom she's helping Tom furnish for our boy. Additionally, the house matter has been settled more readily than I had thought. In recognition of the extra effort I had put in over the years, Tom agreed to sell it and divide the revenues 55 to 45 in my favor. This solution was actually proposed by his attorney, demonstrating their sincere desire to be fair. In addition, Tom has taken a co-parenting course, which was suggested by the mediator but not necessary. Through our new co-parenting app, which allows us to manage appointments, calendars, and our son's activities without having to speak to each other directly, he has been updating me on his progress. The way Tom manages our son's space period has been the most unexpected development. His apartment spare room has been converted into a miniature planetarium complete with ceiling-mounted glow-in-the-dark stars. In order to maintain continuity between houses, he asked me for our son's nighttime ritual, which he has been practicing with his mother. Since neither of us believes that a 2-week period without seeing either parent is healthy for our son, I continue to see him every few days while Tom is away. We've arranged for Wednesday supper with whoever doesn't have him that week and alternating weekends. Instead of rehashing our marital problems, the mediation sessions have been fruitful since they have focused on realistic co-parenting techniques regarding managing school schedules, healthcare decisions, and holiday plans. Tom has been actively engaging, taking notes, and posing pertinent questions. No more conflict on social media or late-night texts. We've set clear contact boundaries. Our lawyers or the co-parenting app handle everything. In a last update, Tom willingly removed all of his earlier posts regarding our predicament and said that we are resolving the matter in private for the sake of our son. Through all of this, his mother has been an unanticipated blessing. In addition to teaching Tom how to be a parent, she also acts as a mediator between us when tensions arise. She set up a meeting with both sets of grandparents last week so we could have a reasonable conversation about our disagreements over preschool alternatives. In the end, we came up with a solution that satisfied everyone. Our son appears to be adjusting to the new situation rather nicely, although we're attempting to keep things somewhat consistent by bringing his favorite stuffed animals with him when he moves between homes. He is thrilled to have 2 rooms and 2 sets of toys without showing any signs of concern. He stopped asking when we were returning home and instead talked about mommy's and daddy's houses. Our lawyers are taking care of the financial matters expertly, with explicit instructions on how much each of us will pay and how the funds may be utilized. We are creating a joint account especially for our son's costs. Tom proposed this on his own because he wanted to make sure that our financial obligations as co-parents were transparent. We have a thorough parenting plan that addresses everything from medical choices to education. Even instructions on how to manage future relationships have been included, such as meeting any possible new partners before presenting them to our kid. I am aware that there are still obstacles in our way. This is only the start of our co-parenting adventure, and there will surely be setbacks. However, for the first time since it all started, I have genuine hope that we will be able to prioritize our son's needs and cooperate as parents even if we are unable to cooperate as spouses. The most important thing is that my son is happier than I have seen him in months. Both Tom and I now realize that letting go of the previous hurts is less essential than becoming good co-parents. I am glad we were able to come to an agreement that prioritizes our son's welfare while still enabling us to have deep connections with him. I appreciate all of your help and guidance during this trip. When I was having self-doubt, your advice kept me going and helped me make choices that would benefit my son and myself. This community has been an amazing source of insight and strength.